Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. I am Paul Zeise. It is the Big Show. We are always, as you know, coming at you from, right around 5 o'clock. We're trying to wrap up the day in sports, maybe look ahead to the next day in sports and figure out what's next. Obviously, there was a big bomb sort of dropped on everybody today. And I think that it's one of those bombs that I just kind of find amazing, to be honest. I kind of find it amazing. It's one of those things where you know, because he is who he is, I guess most people sort of just gave the benefit of the doubt that maybe he was getting some time off or he was beat up a little bit. And, they were just sort of nursing him along. But Cam Heyward has essentially been holding in at practice. You read the reports now, everybody is basically saying, well, he has been in uniform. He's been extremely limited, however, basically not very much at all working with anybody or working, in any of the drills or any of that kind of stuff. And actually, he's been sort of working out on the side by himself. Of course, that comes after the report that Cam Heyward would like to get a better deal. He's actually angling for more money. And I guess the biggest thing that he's seen is defensive linemen have made a lot of money this offseason and the last offseason, and his deal feels like it isn't enough. So he is looking to get a restructured deal. And in order to do that, he would like to basically say, he wants this deal that he has ripped up and get something new on the books. Now, he's got basically, 2 years left, and he is due basically $25 or $26 million over the next 2 years, and actually more than that, $35 or $36 million over the next 2 years. His deal essentially was 3 years, $51 million, $17 million per year, cap hit of $19 million. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where I don't know. I look at it and I basically say that he is now a guy who I would tell you is in a place where he wants more money. And maybe if he doesn't get more money, he wants more guaranteed money. He wants his deal restructured. His original extension was 4 years, $65 million. That was from 20 to 24. Then, if you remember, he kind of then got a 3-year deal where he ripped up the last year of that deal that he was on. And so, for the next 2 years, he's going to make, meaning this year and next year, he's going to make $30 million, 29 million and some change. And $16 million of it guaranteed. In other words, the Steelers probably had the ability to get out of the contract at the end of this year without a whole lot of pain for next year. So I think that that's probably what the most important note is. It is one of those situations where he signed a deal and now he sees what the market is. And he feels like he's underpaid, undervalued, however you want to say it. And I don't know, that I completely disagree that maybe he is underpaid and undervalued. By the same token, I think he paid, honestly, I think he signed a deal. And, the Steelers were actually even on the fence a little bit when you think about it, about his deal, about giving him as much money as he wanted and the years that he wanted. And so I just don't know, I think one of the things that happens here, if the Steelers cave and they give in and they decide that basically they're going to, go ahead and figure out, well, this is where we're at. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where if they give in and give him a new deal, do they set a really bad precedent for other players? Now, someone pointed out they did restructure a deal one time for Antonio Brown, where they were able to give him more money when he wanted more money. And I think that Cam Heyward, while he's not in Antonio Brown's status in terms of where he fits in the league, because Antonio Brown, you could have made the case, was the best receiver in the league when he was looking for more money. I honestly think that this is going to be a really kind of a touchy subject here or whatever, because Cam Heyward is A, such an important player for them. B, I think the other part of it is he's a guy who is beloved in this town. And C, he's a guy that is, somebody who probably is going to, if he decides that he doesn't like what's going on and it becomes a little bit ugly, then what happens? Well, he's the guy that's beloved. But it's interesting when I see, some of the comments already that are coming out from the standpoint of there are a lot of fans who are basically saying, you know what, Cam, you signed a deal. And since you signed the deal, you should honor the deal. And the deal that you signed was actually a very generous deal, given everything that we're talking about and your age and all that other stuff. So maybe you should actually go and think about honoring the deal. And I think that's where it comes down. It really does, at least in my mind. Like, I think it's one of those things where he's a guy that, so many people like and adore in this town. He's, obviously somebody that many fans would love to be a quote unquote one helmet guy. But by the same token, it's kind of interesting to me when you think about it. He's a guy that could easily get people to turn on him. And I've already seen on social media a lot of people saying, wait a minute, hold up. This isn't something that is actually going to, work out because you signed a deal. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people are with this thing. A lot of people actually are not on Cam Heyward's side when it comes to this. So I feel like it's one of those things where you have to really understand it from the standpoint of it's important for most people, I think, to really step back. Look at it from Cam Heyward's perspective. Let's look at it from Cam Heyward's perspective. He wants to be a Steeler. He's been a Steeler. He's a guy that I think is probably, in many ways going to be one of those situations where some people say, hey, I love Cam, love everything that he said, love everything that he stood for here, love that he's been an ambassador, a guy that's played hurt, and all that other good stuff. But reality is, you know what? We just can't, and in our own mind, can't in good conscience agree that he should get a new deal. I think that's probably where most people are at right now. And I'm going to tell you, I think that it's going to be important for Cam Heyward to sort of not play hardball here. I get it. And here's the thing. The fact that he's holding in or whatever, he's in camp, but he's not, it doesn't matter. In fact, you probably don't want him practicing anyway. So that's where I would tell you we're at with it. Because to me, Cam Heyward is a guy that's very important to what the Steelers are doing and what they need to do. But he's also a guy, as we found in this town, he's also a guy who probably many people are going to turn on quickly if he decides that he wants to continue down this path where he, absolutely has to get a new deal. Part of it is probably where he's at in his career. He's an older player, and I think a lot of people understand that. They understand he's an older player. They understand that he's somebody who, probably is going to, probably somebody who's going to retire in the next few years. But I do think that it's important also, when we look at it from that standpoint, it's important to remember that people in this town love the Steelers. And for the most part, in all of these kind of contract disputes, they generally are going to side with the Steelers. Now, with T.J. Watt, obviously a lot of people sided with T.J. Watt, but, T.J. Watt, when it comes down to it, needed a new deal. He was at the end of his deal. I don't really necessarily think that, it's either or, because T.J. Watt's younger than Cam Heyward. He's younger than him. And I think that's where it becomes dicey, is that people, they wanted T.J. Watt to stay with the Steelers because they believe that he still has a lot of value beyond this year. So I'm just going to tell you, I think that when you look at it and add it all up together, Cam Heyward is a guy who is very, very, very much beloved here. He's somebody who I think that really, if you think about it, is going to probably come out of this and still be very, very beloved. But he's got to be a little bit careful, because I think that there are a number of people, and I'm looking at the comments already on the side here, and it feels to me like there's a number of people who are basically saying that they are going to, in so many ways, that they're probably going to basically side with the Steelers. Not because they don't like Cam Heyward, but because he's got a contract. And because he's got a contract and he signed it and he agreed to it and he's near the end, that's probably the biggest issue. That's probably the biggest issue. So I feel like it's important to note in many ways that where we're at and what we're doing is so important. Because I think that's, the story for today is that Cam Heyward wants more money. Now, here's the other thing. Cam Heyward isn't the only one. Adam Schefter, who's been all over this, Adam Schefter has basically said that quietly Chris Boswell is looking for more money. And again, it's very similar. It's very, very, very similar. He believes he's underpaid based on what the market is, and that the market's changed, and now the Steelers need to take care of him. And, again, I would say, honestly, even though he's a quote-unquote kicker, he probably in some ways has more value than Cam Heyward. Now, I know that, teams don't value kickers that way. But think about it. If you think about the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, how many games would they have lost if they had a kicker that wasn't reliable? How many games? How many games do you think Chris Boswell, being reliable, being able to kick game-winning and game-tying field goals, being able to kick field goals, in bad weather, whatever. How much do you think that would be worth if you really look at the value of who is affecting the winning and losing of games more? Boswell? I know he's just a kicker. And when we say kicker, well, there's some people that say, it's just one of those things where I look at it and say, well, do the math. How many games do you really believe that the Steelers would have won or lost based on their kicker? That's what I would like to know. And to me, I think Chris Boswell might have a stronger case than Cam Heyward. I mean, I don't, necessarily, again, I don't necessarily think that guys who want more money or whatever are necessarily always wrong. When you look at the market and you say, well, maybe he is underpaid. The flip side of that is you signed the deal. And since you signed the deal, I just don't know that it's necessarily really important in many, many ways. I just don't know that it's necessarily important that, well, now the rest of the market has changed. And so because the market has changed, well, guess what? I want more money. Okay, how much more money do you want? How much more money do you want? Because you're the one who decided, okay, that you were going to sign the deal that you signed. You're the one who, decided that, hey, this was a contract I wanted. And let's face it, when you signed that deal, there were a lot of people in this town that said, well, maybe, you're done or you've been done or whatever. And so as a result, they were all basically saying the Steelers are doing you a favor here by signing you a deal. That's what I think. That's just me. And I think that's where we're at. You signed the deal. Yes, the market has changed a little bit, but you had to know that. You look at all these different quarterbacks, for instance. They signed a deal. They're the highest paid guy, all that good stuff. And then all of a sudden, 3 other guys sign, the next week, in the next 2 weeks, 3 other guys sign, and now all of a sudden your deal is obsolete. I think that's what, you have to keep your eye on, or you keep remembering. I think that's what, to me, is important. And so I got to feel at the end of the day that most people probably are basically in the camp of, Cam, sorry, but you signed the deal. And yes, the market's changed a little bit and guys have signed for more money and all that other good stuff, but you signed the deal. And since you signed it, and also it's one of those things that it's going to be where I don't know that at his stage in the career he has as much leverage as he thinks. Now, the one thing I will say is he's got leverage from this standpoint. And that is he's got leverage from the standpoint of, I think that he is going to basically be able to say, well, you need me this year. You might not need me next year, but you need me this year. And it's too late in the process for you to find somebody to replace me. So that's where I would tell you that it's going to be important to note. That's where I would tell you that it is going to be important to remember that this late in the process, okay, that you're going to see the Steelers are in a tough situation. They really are, because they're in a situation of where, even though Cam Heyward's a little older of a player, if you think about it, it's going to be a situation of where, what are they going to do without him? They don't have anyone to replace him. And quite frankly, the way they drafted specifically to help him. They drafted somebody specifically to sort of add to what he does. And so I feel like that's going to be, the biggest thing in my mind is the Steelers understand they're between a rock and a hard place, because they can't really survive this year without him. They just can't. They don't have any other options. And so since they don't have any other options, it's either Hayward figures it out or he doesn't. That's what I'm telling you. So I think that it's going to be, sort of touch and go, really. I just do. Because this isn't an easy one to resolve. Nor is Chris Boswell, but the difference is I doubt that Chris Boswell is going to be a guy who holds out or whatever, and makes it a problem, for anybody, to be honest. That's what I would tell you. And I think that's where it is right now. It's one of those situations where Chris Boswell, they'll kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work with him. And I think at the end of the day, he'll probably just go about his business and kick, right? But he also knows this: if he prices himself out, he's not going to get a big deal because he's a kicker from anyone, really. Someone will sign him to a decent deal, but in terms of like demanding more money, probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. So I feel like that's where we're at when it comes to these two contracts, from the standpoint of these are two guys that probably the Steelers need. Now, I'm reading a couple of people who are basically saying that this is just greedy on his part. This guy says he's losing respect for him. Another guy says they should trade him for a younger player. I don't know. Again, the Steelers don't do business that way. You know that. They never have, and they never will. They're in a situation of where they try and treat their guys good. They try and be good to their guys. So I would tell you, I think that's probably where we're at with it. They're not going to go ahead and just, throw him under the bus. They're just not. It's not how they do things. I feel like that's a big, big part of the equation that we have to talk about. They're going to basically make sure that they try and take care of their guys. And that's hopefully a good one in many, many ways. So to me, I'm looking at it from that standpoint. I understand and I see where people are coming from. I don't know that this is pure greed. When it comes to, I think it's, not necessarily pure greed when it comes to Cam Heyward. He just wants a better deal, right? He just wants a better deal. And he wants more money, and he knows he's at the end of his career, and he knows this might be the last summer that he ever has leverage like this. I don't know how much leverage, but he's got some leverage. He's definitely got some leverage. And that's where, the disconnect for me is. People are angry about it all. And, they're just basically in a situation of where they need to figure it out in a better way. So I think that really, when it comes to him and when it comes to Chris Boswell, I expect Boswell probably to cave quicker than Hayward will, because I think Hayward is in a place where he believes, he's got leverage, and Boswell knows as a kicker, if you make too much money as a kicker, they're always looking to get rid of you. By the way, the game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's. Archie's, home of the 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. It's the home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich, so make sure you talk to Archie and say hello to him when you get down there. We love Archie always, and we always will love Archie. So get down there and enjoy a good meal and everything else when you're there. Pirates play tonight, by the way. They are taking on the Reds. Obviously, Reds are pushing to try and be a wild card team. It is Paul Skeens night on the mound. Paul Skeens. If you go to your FanDuel app, you see that the Pirates are minus 168. That means you've got to bet 168 to win 100. You can go to FanDuel. There's a lot of different ways you can bet on these games. There's same game parlays. There's all kinds of different things you can do. But if you're going to bet the Pirates tonight, you're laying a lot of money that Paul Skeens is going to win the game. And I think that's, one of those things where you risk it. If you think that it'll be a typical game when Skeens pitches, where the other team will hang around long enough to beat the bullpen, well, then you might bet the Reds. Because the Reds are actually minus or plus 142, which means for every $100 you bet, you're going to win 142. So get back to FanDuel. You can download it on your phone. You can bet from anywhere. It's important that you do that. Now, then, Steelers play this weekend, and basically what you're going to find is that there are not going to be a ton of guys who are actually going to play in this game. Mike Tomlin made it very clear that the guys who are going to play and are not going to play, most of the starters that you can think of are probably not going to play. Makes a lot of sense, I think, from the standpoint of it's going to be a game where they're just going against Jacksonville. They're just going to try and get a feel for what they're doing. So Aaron Rodgers is not going to play. DK Metcalf, not going to play. Obviously, Cam Heyward, not going to play. Alex Highsmith's not going to play. T.J. Watt, Patrick Queen, Nick Herbig, Deshaun Elliott, Joey Porter, Isaac Seumalo, Pat Freiermuth, Jalen Warren, Chris Boswell. None of them are going to play. So that's going to be, what you're going to find when you tune into the game, if you tune into the game. Those are the guys who are going to play. These other guys are not going to play. And I think that's going to be an important, if you look at it, that's going to be an important thing from that standpoint. So, I feel like it's one of those things where this is a game where you're going to see a healthy dose of Mason Rudolph and Skylar Howard or Skylar Thompson or whatever the hell his name is. And you're going to see a lot of backups on defense. I do find it interesting both tackles will play, which they should. If you read any of the reports out of camp today, well, then you see that both tackles apparently had a really good day. Again, I don't necessarily know what that means from the standpoint of, guys watching practice. They see a few things, but obviously they're not watching the film. They're not watching what coaches are watching. They're not trying to see what they're seeing. But again, I just feel like you have to remember, honestly, you have to remember that it takes a long, long time to get a couple of offensive linemen up to speed. So as many reps as they possibly can have, they have. That's really what it comes down to. And that's really where we're at. So I feel like it's important now to go forward with that. It's important to go through it all. It's important to, understand when you tune in, then you're basically not going to see many of the Steelers starters. It's the right call. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers, I know he's new. He's here new. He's trying to get you can do that in practice without putting him in jeopardy. And I think that's what they're trying to do. DK Metcalf doesn't need to be out there to take a big shot from some cornerback from Jacksonville. You don't want any of these guys that you need for the season. You don't want any of those guys getting hurt. You just don't. So I think that's where we're at with it. And so it's going to be very, very interesting to me just to kind of watch some of the young guys play. You'll see some younger players, see some players maybe that won't even make the team, will get a lot of reps, guys that they're going to audition for the practice squad. There's a lot of different ways that they're going to divide all of this up to try and figure it out. But the long and short of it is, if you were hoping to see Aaron Rodgers, if you were hoping to see Aaron Rodgers or DK Metcalf or even T.J. Watt or Cam Heyward, you're not going to see him, or Jalen Ramsey, you're not going to see them. Even Joey Porter, they're not going to play. Be interesting on Monday to wrap all this up. We'll talk about it all, figure it out, see how it all ends up, see who plays well, who doesn't play well. Till then, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.